The first sign of trouble was the sputtering sound from the engine. The second was the absolute silence that followed. I stared at the dashboard like it had personally betrayed me. "Don't you dare!" I whispered, gripping the steering wheel like intimidation would somehow make the car start again. Not now. Not in the middle of the damn countryside. Not when I'm still 20 miles from town. But my little city-born hatchback had given up the ghost. The engine had died somewhere between hope and humiliation, leaving me stranded on a lonely stretch of dirt road, surrounded by acres of grass, wooden fences, and cows who looked entirely unimpressed with my existence. I let my head fall back against the seat and sighed loudly, the kind of sigh that tasted like regret, sweat, and bad luck. I reached for my phone, knowing full well what I'd find. One bar. Just one. Not enough to call for help. Not enough for Google Maps to load. Not even enough for me to tweet something dramatic about my death by tractor. Because yes, somewhere in the distance, I could hear it. That low, grumbling sound that could only be one thing in this part of the world. A tractor. I stepped out of the car into the thick, hot air. My sneakers sank into soft earth as I looked down the road. Dust curled up on the horizon, and sure enough, there it was. A big, old, red tractor, moving slowly, deliberately, like it had nowhere to be and all day to get there. And riding it well. Let's just say the universe finally decided to throw me a bone. He was tall. He was built like something carved out of stone and testosterone. His shirt was rolled at the sleeves, dirt-streaked, and clung to broad shoulders in a way that made me forget the heat, the broken car, even my name for a second. A thick beard, a cocky squint, sun-kissed skin. He looked like the kind of man who smelled like sweat and pine and danger. I couldn't decide if I wanted to punch him, kiss him, or run. The tractor rolled to a stop beside me. He pulled his sunglasses down and looked me over. Slowly. "Let me guess," he drawled, voice thick and warm like molasses. "City boy tried to play country for the summer?" I managed to smile, brushing damp hair from my forehead. Guilty. Got the cliché to prove it. He glanced at my car, then at my shoes. "Those'll get eaten alive out here. You out of gas?" "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "And out of luck, apparently." His mouth curved into a smirk. It made something tighten in my chest. "Well," he said, "luck just changed." He climbed down from the tractor in one smooth motion. I got a better look then. He was even taller than I thought. Muscular, rough around the edges. The kind of man who probably knew how to fix engines, build fences, and break hearts without even trying. He extended a hand. "Grayson." I took it. His grip was firm, warm, and calloused in ways that made my brain short-circuit for a second. "Eli," I said, forcing my voice to sound steady. "Nice to meet you, Grayson." "Stranded, Eli," he said with a slight tilt of his head. "I reckon you could use a ride." I looked up at the tractor, then back at him. "On that, you want a limo? You're on the wrong side of state." "Fair point." "All right," I said, a slow grin tugging at my lips. "Give me a ride, cowboy." He nodded toward the ladder, stepping back to let me climb up first. I made it about halfway before his voice floated up behind me. "You ever been on a tractor before?" "Is that a euphemism?" He laughed, deep, genuine, and with just enough grit to make my knees wobble a little. "Not yet." I swallowed and kept climbing. The cab was surprisingly clean, for a farm vehicle at least. I perched on the edge of the seat, trying not to look completely out of place, while Grayson swung in beside me, his body heat like a wall beside me. He reached past me to flip a switch, his arm brushing mine. "You might want to hold on," he said. "To what?" He looked at me sideways, smile still playing at the corners of his mouth. "Whatever you can." The tractor roared back to life and began to roll forward. Slowly, rhythmically, the vibration of the engine rumbling beneath us, the scent of oil and hay in the air. We drove in silence for a while. Not awkward, just loaded. Tension curled in the air like smoke, thick and undeniable. "So," I said eventually. What's a guy like you doing out here all alone? He arched a brow. I live here. No, I mean, I waved vaguely at the endless fields. This all yours? Most of it. Been in my family for generations. I whistled. Must be a lot of work. Grayson nodded, eyes fixed ahead. Sun up to sundown. Dirt under your nails, sweat on your back. Aches in places you didn't know existed. But there's peace in it too. I watched him for a moment. The strong line of his jaw. The way his hands flexed around the wheel. There was something magnetic about him. Solid. Like the earth itself would bend for him if he asked nicely enough. I don't think I've ever worked it hard in my life, I admitted. I can tell, he said, glancing at my hands. Excuse me. He smirked again. Soft hands. Smooth skin. No calluses. City boy through and through. And here I thought I was pulling off rugged and mysterious. He laughed again. You're pulling off lost and exhausted. Fair enough. The tractor turned down a gravel path that led toward a farmhouse in the distance. Old but charming, surrounded by trees and a wraparound porch. A barn stood to the left, painted a fading red. Chickens scattered as we passed. You live here alone? I asked. Grayson nodded once. For now. No wife. Girlfriend. He shot me a look I couldn't quite read. Nope. Boyfriend. That made him pause. A beat of silence stretched. Then he looked at me, a slow smirk blooming. You always this forward. Only when I'm being given a ride by a dangerously attractive man who smells like sweat and sin. His smile deepened, eyes sparkling with something dark and playful. Your trouble, Eli. I get that a lot. We rolled to a stop beside the barn. Grayson climbed down and reached up to offer me a hand. I hesitated for half a second, then took it. That same shock of heat passed between us. He didn't let go right away. You can stay in the guest cabin, he said. Back behind the main house. It's got power, water, and a bed. I'm not interrupting anything. He shook his head. Nah, just me and the land out here. Well, I said, stepping down and brushing dirt from my jeans. I hope the land's okay with guests. He looked me over again, slower this time, more deliberate. I reckon it'll survive. The rain came out of nowhere. Big, fat drops that hit the ground like applause. Grayson cursed under his breath and grabbed my wrist. Come on, he said. You'll get soaked. We ran for the barn. I couldn't stop laughing, half from the suddenness of it, half from the absurdity of everything. By the time we ducked under the roof, we were both dripping wet. He turned to me, water running down his neck. His shirt clung to him, revealing muscles that made my stomach tighten. You okay? He asked. Just wet. His eyes flicked down my body. Slowly. Yeah, he said, voice lower now. Me too. My breath caught in my throat. The rain pounded on the barn roof like a heartbeat. His eyes held mine, and for a second, the world felt very still. Then he stepped back. Just an inch. Enough to break the tension. Enough to make me ache. Cabin's this way, he said. I followed, still tingling, still watching the way he walked, confident, grounded, like every inch of him belonged to this earth. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to belong to him. The cabin was small but cozy. A single bed, a dusty bookshelf, a worn armchair, and a little kitchenette that looked like it hadn't seen a meal since the early 2000s. The whole place smelled faintly of pine and old wood, earthy, warm, and strangely comforting. I dropped my duffel bag at the door. Grayson had grabbed it from the car, without even being asked, like it weighed nothing, then stood in the middle of the room, dripping rainwater onto the floor. I peeled off my shirt, trying to wring out the worst of it, still a little dazed from the whole tractor pickup in the rain situation. My mind kept looping back to that moment in the barn, the way Grayson had looked at me, heat simmering beneath that easygoing smirk. I wasn't imagining it. I couldn't be. The man had practically undressed me with his eyes. And yet, he hadn't crossed any lines. No flirtation beyond the occasional smirk or stare. Just enough to leave me wondering if I'd hallucinated the whole thing. Maybe that's just how country boys looked at people. Maybe I was projecting, wet, exhausted, and vulnerable enough to read too much into a half-second glance. Still, I couldn't stop replaying it. After a lukewarm shower and the world's saddest cup of instant coffee, I lay down on the bed with the intent of scrolling through my phone, only to be greeted by a no-service message and 3% battery. Perfect. I dropped the phone on the nightstand and stared up at the wooden ceiling. It creaked occasionally, as if settling into its bones. Outside, the rain slowed to a soft patter. In the distance, something howled. Maybe a coyote. Maybe my dignity. Sleep found me faster than I expected. I woke to the low hum of morning. Golden light poured through the slatted blinds, painting stripes across my bare chest. I blinked up at the ceiling, the memory of yesterday crashing back all at once. The car, the rain, the tractor, the man. Grayson. Something thudded outside. Repetitive. Rhythmic. Thunk. 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 Curious. I rolled out of bed and shuffled to the window, still groggy and shirtless. The scene outside punched the breath out of me. Grayson stood just beyond the cabin, shirtless and barefoot in the dewy grass, swinging an axe like it was an extension of his body. The sun hit his skin just right, highlighting every muscle, every line, every freckle. His back flexed with each movement, sweat catching in the small of it. He brought the axe down again, clean and fast, splitting the log in one strike. He didn't see me watching. I didn't even try to look away. The way his body moved, deliberate, controlled, like he knew exactly what it was doing to me. His jeans hung low on his hips, and I swore I caught a flash of that dangerous villain every time he bent down to grab another log. I pressed a hand to the window pane. It was cold. I wasn't. Jesus Christ. I'd seen shirtless guys before. I'd been shirtless guys before. But this was different. This was primal. This was a thirst trap in 1080p, lit by God himself. He paused to wipe sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, then looked up, right at me. Our eyes locked. I froze. Half-naked, messy-haired, borderline drooling against his window like the world's thirstiest raccoon. He didn't look away. He didn't smirk. He winked. My knees nearly gave out. I backed away from the window, heart doing a goddamn tap dance in my chest. Cool, I thought. Totally normal. You're totally fine. Just breathe. It's not like the hot farm god outside is chopping wood shirtless in some straight-from romance novel fever dream. Still, I paced the room like a caged animal, hands on my hips, trying to get it together. The smell of breakfast wafted in through the open cabin window. Eggs, maybe? Bacon. And something distinctly cinnamon? I opened the door and stepped out into the sunlight. Grayson was nowhere in sight now, but there was a neat pile of firewood stacked by the porch. A silent offering. A message carved in timber. I followed the smell. The main house looked different in the daylight. Less imposing, more homey. I knocked once before nudging the door open. Morning, city boy. Grayson called from the kitchen. You sleep all right? I stepped in. He was fully dressed now, but the image of him earlier, skin slick with sweat, axe in hand, was seared into my brain. Barely, I said. There was this noise. Some kind of wild animal outside my window. Loud, aggressive, dangerously sexy. He turned from a stove with a grin. Ah, that was me. Of course it was. I sat at the small kitchen table while he plated food. Eggs, toast, thick-cut bacon, and a cinnamon roll that looked like it had no business being this good out here in the wild. I wasn't expecting this, I said, eyeing the food. You cook too. He shrugged, sliding the plate in front of me. Gotta eat to work. And I like things done right. I looked up at him. He met my gaze. There was something in the way he said it. Not cocky. Not casual. Just real. I took a bite. Damn. He smirked. Told you. I looked down at the food, then up at him. So let me get this straight. You drive a tractor like a movie stuntman, chop wood like a Greek god, and you cook like a professional chef." He leaned against the counter, arms folded across his chest. "You forgot one thing." "Oh, I also fix cars." "Of course he does. Tell me," I said, "is this whole thing just a really elaborate thirst trap? Because it's working." His smile shifted, less teasing now, more thoughtful. "I don't know what you're used to, Eli," he said slowly, "but out here, we don't really do half-truths or playing dumb. You want something, you say it." I swallowed. "Is that what you're doing?" He didn't move closer. He didn't flirt. He just held my gaze and said, "Maybe." A beat. Then he turned back to the stove. "After breakfast, I'll show you around. If you're going to be here for a while, you might as well learn the ropes." "Farm ropes?" I asked. "Or something else?" That time, the smirk returned. "You'll find out." We continued the tour till we got to a stack of hays. I had no idea hay bales could be so heavy. They looked light in movies, people tossing them around like props. But as I stood in the wide-open barn, the smell of dry grass and dust thick in the air, I was sweating before I even touched the first one. "You're not going to hurt yourself, are you?" Grayson asked, watching from a few feet away, arms folded, leaning against a wooden post like some rugged, denim-clad temptation. "Would hate to have to carry you back to the cabin." I shot him a look. "I think I'll manage." He raised an eyebrow. "All right, city boy. Let's see what you've got." I squared up to the bale. It was bound tight, compacted like a brick made of straw, and easily weighed more than I wanted to admit. I tried to lift it the way I might a gym weight. Bad idea. My knees wobbled. My grip slipped. Grayson didn't laugh. He didn't tease. He walked up behind me. And suddenly, I was all too aware of just how close he was. "Use your legs," he murmured, voice low and close. "Not your back. You're going to throw something out like that." I nodded. Couldn't really speak. Not with his breath grazing the back of my neck like that. He stepped in even closer. "Here," he said. "Let me." His hands came around me, one on my waist, the other sliding down my arm to adjust my grip. Every point of contact sparked like a live wire. My skin prickled. My breath hitched. "This ain't the gym," he said softly. "You need leverage. Bend your knees. Keep your core tight." My core was already tight, thanks. I adjusted my stance. He stayed behind me, his chest brushing my back, just slightly, his hand not leaving my hip, not moving, just there. I lifted again, and this time it worked. The bale shifted. I heaved it up and over to the cart nearby, dropping it with a satisfying thud. "Nice," Grayson said, stepping back, hands sliding off me slower than necessary. "Told you had it in you." "Think I deserve a medal," I panted. He smirked. "You'll get something, all right." Oh. I glanced at him, searching his face for some sign of hesitation, some signal that he was just messing around. But all I saw was steady amusement, laced with something heavier, something that lingered. He didn't break eye contact, not even for a second. We kept working, one bale after another. And while my arm started to ache and sweat clung to my skin, it was that look, that slow, burning look Grayson kept giving me, that really made me feel unsteady. At one point, I caught him watching me from across the barn, eyes dragging down my body, openly, like he wasn't trying to hide it anymore. And when I lifted another bale, he came over, his hand sliding casually down my lower back as he passed by to check the straps on the cart. He didn't have to touch me, but he did, and I let him. The sun climbed higher. The barn got hotter. My shirt stuck to my skin, and I could see sweat glistening along Grayson's forearms. We took a break by the far wall, sitting on one of the leftover bales, sipping cold water from a thermos. He handed me the bottle and sat close. Too close. "Not bad for a first-timer," he said. I laughed breathlessly. "So generous with your praise." He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. "Don't need to praise you if I'm already watching." The air between us snapped tight. I turned to him. "Grayson, You ever kissed a man before? The question hit me like a jolt. I blinked. Swallowed. Is it that obvious? He shrugged. You're watching me like you want to. But you're also hesitating. So I figure maybe you've thought about it. But never done it. Yeah. I looked down. Thought about it. Thinking gets lonely, he said simply. Silence. My heart pounded so loud I thought he could hear it. The barn felt smaller now, like the air had thickened with possibility. He reached out slowly, not to kiss me, but to brush a piece of hay from my hair. His fingers lingered. You want to stop here, he murmured. You say the word. I'll back off. But I didn't say a word, because I didn't want him to back off. I leaned in, tentatively, my pulse thunderous in my ears. He didn't move. Just watched me. Let me close the space. Let me choose. And when our lips finally touched, soft, testing, uncertain, it felt like everything I'd been holding back cracked wide open. He tasted like salt and heat, and something unnameably male. The kiss deepened, slow and hungry. His hand cupped my jaw, thumb grazing my cheekbone like he was memorizing it. When we finally pulled back, I exhaled shakily. Well, I breathed. Guess I'm not just thinking anymore. Grayson smiled, brushing a thumb across my bottom lip. Nope, not anymore. We didn't say much else after that. Just sat there, shoulder to shoulder, the occasional glance speaking louder than any words. Something had shifted between us, and neither of us was pretending anymore. The sky turned mean fast. One moment, we were finishing up chores in the fading gold of early evening. The next, clouds rolled like a bruise spreading across the sky. Thick, low, threatening. The air grew heavy. The kind of weight you feel in your chest before a storm. Storm's coming, Grayson said, tossing a feed bucket onto the porch like it owed him money. And she's not going to be shy about it. I stood by the edge of the barn, watching the horizon swallow the sun. How bad? He looked up at the sky, squinting. Bad enough you'll want to stay close. Power usually cuts when it rains this hard. Just as he said it, thunder cracked in the distance, rolling deep and low like some angry god clearing his throat. And then the sky opened. We ran for the cabin, soaked before we even hit the steps. I burst through the door, laughing, dripping all over the wooden floor. Grayson came in right behind me, cursing, water streaming off his hat, his shirt clinging like a second skin. He peeled it off in one smooth motion and tossed it over the back of a chair. And just like that, I forgot how to breathe. Thunder cracked again, louder this time. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Perfect. Got candles in the drawer, Grayson muttered, rummaging around. I watched the muscles in his back shift as he moved. The way water still dripped down the line of his spine. My jeans clung to my thighs like a second skin. Cold and wet and uncomfortable, but I couldn't move. Not until he lit a match. The warm glow illuminated his face in flashes, jaw sharp, lips parted, eyes catching the flame just right. He lit a candle and set it down on the table between us. You should change, he said without looking at me. Can't have you getting sick. I hesitated. Yeah, good idea. The small guest room at the back had a dry t-shirt he'd lent me earlier, and I peeled out of my soaked clothes, skin prickling from the chill. When I stepped back into the main room in the too big shirt and nothing else, Grayson looked up and stared. The candle flickered between us. Comfortable, he asked, voice low. Trying to be, I said, crossing the room slowly. He didn't move, just leaned back in the chair, watching me, like a predator watching something walk willingly into the trap. I stopped in front of him, close enough to feel the heat from his body. I don't think I ever thanked you, I said quietly, for giving me a ride, letting me stay, teaching me how not to break my back with hay bales. He smiled slow. You were a fast learner. The storm raged outside, rain slamming the tin roof, wind rattling the windows, thunder shaking the walls. But in here it was just us. Just this. I keep thinking about earlier, I said, my voice a notch above a whisper. Which part? Your hands on me. His gaze sharpened. That's so. I nodded. And the kiss. He stood slowly. I could hear the leather of his belt creak as he moved. The candle cast shadows across his bare chest, painting him in gold and shadow. He took a step toward me. You want another? He asked. I didn't answer. I just reached for him. And then we were kissing again, this time deeper, rougher, like we were both tired of pretending. His hands grabbed my waist, pulling me flush against him. I gasped against his mouth as he pushed me gently, but firmly back toward the table. The candle flickered wildly as I was lifted onto the wooden surface, the warmth of his mouth trailing down my neck. My fingers curled into his hair, pulling, guiding. He was solid between my legs, hands gripping my thighs, and every inch of me buzzed with anticipation. The storm crashed around us, but inside, everything burned. You sure? He murmured against my skin. Yes, I breathed. Grayson, yes. He didn't hesitate after that. The rest of the night was a blur of heat and moans and slow, desperate touches. The table, the floor, later the bed. The storm outside howled, but we made our own thunder, bodies tangled, breathless, real. For once, I didn't feel lost. For once, I didn't want to leave. The next morning was magical. I woke to the smell of bacon and coffee and the creak of the old cabin floorboards as someone moved around just beyond the half-open bedroom door. For a moment, I didn't move. Just lay there with the sheets tangled around my hips, my head spinning. Not from sleep, but from everything that had happened. Last night wasn't a dream. My sore thighs and the faint bite marks on my collarbone told me as much. I reached over to the spot beside me. Empty. Of course it was. Grayson didn't strike me as the type to linger, or cuddle, or talk. I wasn't even sure if he'd stayed in bed after. Maybe he'd gone straight back to chopping wood, or feeding pigs, or wrestling bears, or whatever gruff farm men did to keep emotions at bay. Still, I pulled on a pair of sweats and padded barefoot into the main room. There he was, standing at the stove shirtless again, like it was his uniform, with a spatula in one hand and a mug in the other. The golden morning sun filtered through the windows, catching in his messy hair, dancing over the muscles in his back. He looked devastatingly good, for someone who had kept me up half the night, doing very ungodly things. He didn't turn when he heard me, just muttered, "Coffee's fresh. Help yourself." I tried to play it cool as I grabbed a mug and poured. "Didn't peg you for the breakfast in bed type." "Not in bed," he said, "but I don't let guests starve." Guests. Right. Not guy I ravished and whispered into at 2 a.m. I took a sip of the coffee. It was strong, dark, no sugar, just like him. "So," I said, hovering near the counter, "about last night." Grayson turned then, finally meeting my gaze. For a moment, there was something soft in his eyes. But just as quickly, it was gone. "You don't need to say anything," he said. "Storm had you shook. We got caught up. Happens. Caught up. Like a gust of wind. Like something accidental." I stared at him, heat crawling up my neck. "Wow, that's romantic." He ran a hand through his hair, clearly irritated. "Don't twist it. I'm not saying it didn't mean something. Just, I don't do complications." "And I am one." I raised an eyebrow. "Your city. Passing through. You'll be gone in a week." I swallowed, heart clenching harder than I expected. He wasn't wrong. I was supposed to be gone in a week. But now, everything felt different. He felt different. I set the coffee down, my appetite gone. "Do you always kiss guys like that when they're just passing through?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Grayson didn't answer right away. "I kiss people when I want to," he said finally. "Last night, I wanted to. Still do." He looked at me then, and there it was again. That flicker. That hesitation. Like he was standing on the edge of something big, and didn't know if he wanted to jump. The silence stretched until the sizzle of bacon filled the space. "Well," I said, backing away. "Thanks for the coffee." I'll go, feed the chickens or something. He didn't stop me. Didn't say anything at all. The barnyard was already buzzing by the time I stepped outside. The chickens squawked indignantly when I entered their coop, and I cursed as one pecked my ankle. I grabbed the feed sack and scattered the grain with shaky hands. "Stupid bird," I muttered. "You're holding the bag upside down." A voice drawled behind me. I spun around. Grayson stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me with a mix of amusement and something else, maybe regret. "Thought I'd let you have the full farm experience," he added. "Great," I said. "Is there a special prize if I get pecked to death?" He stepped into the coop, walking straight toward me. My heart thudded. "I was an ass back there," he said, voice low. Didn't mean to make it sound like last night didn't matter. I blinked. Then what did it mean? Grayson rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly looking younger. Softer. It meant I liked it. "I like you. But I've been on my own out here a long time. I don't do this." "Do what?" "This." He gestured between us. "Feeling this way." The chickens clucked around our boots as we stared at each other. I reached out and touched his arm. "Maybe we just see where it goes." He looked down at my hand, then back up at me. "I don't want you to go," he said quietly. I smiled. "Then maybe don't let me." Grayson closed the space between us, slow but sure. He kissed me then, not rough, not hungry, just honest. Sweet. And suddenly, the chickens didn't seem so loud. He suggested we take a drive through town, which I agreed to. Grayson didn't say much on the drive into town. I didn't either. My fingers drummed on my knees, while he stayed firm on the steering wheel. Calloused hands, flexing every time he shifted gears. The truck rattled and moaned like it was built in the 1800s. But it held. Just like him. Rough around the edges, but sturdy. We were heading to the Saturday farmers market in a nearby town. Grayson had to deliver eggs, milk, and some homemade jams that he swore were made by a friend. I didn't press. I was just glad he hadn't pushed me away after yesterday. If anything, he seemed quieter. Not cold. Not distant. Just like a man with thoughts too big to say out loud. When we pulled up, the town center was buzzing with life. Stalls stretched along the main road, shaded by colorful tarps. Locals walked around with baskets and babies. There were mason jars filled with honey, wildflowers bundled in brown paper, and more bearded men in flannel than I knew how to emotionally process. Grayson parked behind his stall and hopped out like he'd done this 1,000 times. "You coming?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder. "Of course," I said, sliding out of the truck. He handed me a crate of eggs. "Careful. Don't drop him." I raised an eyebrow. "Do I look like someone who would drop your precious farm goods?" He gave me a look that said absolutely. We sat up in silence. Well, physical silence. Inside, my mind was a chaotic cocktail of do we talk about last night again? Is this something now? Do I want it to be? The answer to that last one was yes. Emphatically yes. Grayson's stall was immediately popular. People called out to him by name, and he greeted them with that slow, warm smile I'd thought was reserved just for me. "Who's your helper, Gray?" A tall, clean-cut guy with sunglasses and annoyingly perfect teeth asked as he sauntered up to the stall. Grayson shot him a glance. "This is Eli. He's staying on the farm for a bit." The guy gave me a once-over, lips twitching. "City boy, huh?" I offered a tight smile. "Formerly. I've converted. I now live among chickens and emotional repression." Grayson coughed, possibly a laugh. Possibly a warning. "Saw you at the diner last month," the guy continued, speaking to Grayson now. "Alone as usual. Looks like that's changed." Grayson's jaw ticked. "You buying eggs or just flapping your gums, Travis?" Travis chuckled. "Touchy." Then he looked at me again. "Good luck with this one. He doesn't exactly do long-term." Grayson didn't say a word, just handed him a dozen eggs like he was passing over a live grenade. When Travis finally left, I turned to Grayson. "Friend of yours?" "Ex." "Ah." I nodded slowly, tension curling up my spine. Was that supposed to be a warning? He sighed. Don't listen to him. I mean, he wasn't wrong, was he? I said, a little sharper than I meant. You did say you don't do complications. Grayson looked at me, steady and unreadable. You're not a complication. That one sentence hit me, like a punch to the chest. But before I could respond, an older woman walked up, asking about strawberry jam, and Grayson was gone, busy, focused, avoiding. I wandered a little, bought a lemonade from a kid with braces, and a tip jar that said college or tractor, who knows. I watched Grayson from across the square, the way he smiled at the older folks, the way kids waved at him like he was a local legend. He was this place, rooted, unmovable. And me, I was still that guy who broke down on a dirt road with 0 bars of signal and a heart full of excuses. When we finally packed up the stall and loaded the truck, the silence between us wasn't comfortable anymore. You mad? He asked, strapping him beside me. I looked out the window. Why would I be mad? Because Travis is a jackass. I shrugged. So what? You had a life before me. I'm not asking for exclusive rights to your eggs or your heart. Grayson's fingers tapped the wheel. I don't let people in easy, Eli. I noticed. But I'm trying. That made me glance at him. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were on the road, but his voice was raw in a way I hadn't heard before. I don't want this to be just some summer thing, he added. I swallowed hard. Then don't treat it like one. We drove the rest of the way back in silence, but this time it felt different, warmer, like something had cracked open between us. And when we pulled up to the cabin, and he reached across the gear stick to grab my hand, he didn't let go for a long time. Grayson didn't let go of my hand until we got out of the truck. He didn't say anything about it either, just handed me a crate of leftover jams and told me to stick them back in the pantry while he checked on the chickens. It was domestic in a way that made my chest ache. The rest of the afternoon passed in that same wordless rhythm. We moved around each other like we'd been doing this for years. I caught him watching me once as I stacked jars on the shelf. He didn't look away when I caught him, just kept staring like I was something he didn't quite know what to do with. Like maybe he didn't trust it yet, but he wanted to. I was rinsing a pan in the sink when he came in, brushing his hands on a towel. Storm's coming, he said. Need to fix the fence out back before it hits, or the cows will end up in the next county. I turned off the tap. You need help. He gave me a once-over. You sure you're not scared of getting dirty? I smirked. You say that like I haven't already been thrown in mud, chased by a chicken, and nearly gored by a goat this week. Grayson's lip twitched. All right then. Let's go. We walked to the back pasture, the clouds darkening like spilled ink overhead. The wind had picked up, warm and charged, the kind that carried the smell of rain and something more electric underneath. The fence was worse than I expected. One whole section had collapsed. Grayson dropped the toolbox and muttered something under his breath. We've got about an hour, maybe less, he said, rolling up his sleeves. Let's make it count. We worked fast. He handed me nails and wood slats, showing me how to hold them in place, while he hammered. His body pressed close to mine, solid and burning hot despite the wind. Every time he reached around me, I felt his breath on my neck. Every time our fingers brushed, something low in my stomach tightened. I pretended not to notice. I don't think he was pretending. Halfway through, the first crack of thunder split the sky. And then the rain came. Sudden and heavy, soaking us in seconds. Damn, I muttered, wiping water from my eyes. Grayson just kept working, shirt clinging to him, muscles flexing with every movement. Rain slid down his jaw, dripping from his lashes. He looked like a damn Greek god who'd traded his toga for denim and calluses. We're not going to finish in time, I shouted over the rain. He looked up at me. Then we get wet together. And then he smiled slow, crooked, full of that unspoken promise that had been dancing between us since day one. That was it. The moment I lost whatever grip I had on pretending this was just a summer thing. He straightened up, rain pouring around us, and stepped closer. His hand found my waist. My breath hitched. "I haven't kissed you in daylight yet," he said softly. I swallowed. "Why not?" He looked at me like I was the only thing he could see. "Was waiting to see if you'd stay long enough to deserve it." I didn't answer. I just pulled him in. The kiss was different from before. Slower. Wetter, obviously, but also deeper. Like he was letting me taste something he'd never offered anyone else. His hands gripped my hips like he needed something to hold on to. I melted into him, rain forgotten. The world gone quiet except for the thrum of blood in my ears and the occasional moan he tore from me just by tilting his mouth the right way. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless. So was he. "We still have a fence to fix," I whispered, forehead against his. "Fence can wait," he murmured. And then we were kissing again. Harder this time, more desperate. I felt the cold bite of the wet wood against my back as he pressed me against a post. One hand cupping the back of my head, the other slipping lower. Thunder cracked again. Lightning lit up the sky. But the only storm I felt was the one between us. The rain didn't let up. By the time we stumbled back to the house, soaked and half-dazed from what had just happened against that fence post, the sky was black and the thunder was still grumbling across the hills like a tired old man who didn't want to be forgotten. Grayson tossed me a towel without a word and disappeared into the back room. I stood there dripping in the kitchen, holding the towel like an idiot, heart pounding. Everything had changed, and neither of us knew what to do about it. Not really. He returned a few minutes later in a dry t-shirt and joggers, hair still damp but slicked back from his face. He returned a few minutes later in a dry t-shirt and joggers, hair still damp but slicked back from his face. He looked softer in the low kitchen light, like some of the edges had melted off him in the storm. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "Got some whiskey in the shed. You drink." I nodded. "Tonight I will." He smirked and grabbed 2 glasses. We sat on the back porch, the tin roof pinging with rain, a single bulb casting a warm glow over us. The bottle sat between us, already half empty by the time either of us said anything important. Grayson sipped his drink slow, staring into the dark like he was waiting for something to come out of it. I watched his hands. They were always moving, scratching his thigh, tapping the rim of the glass, running through his hair, like he didn't trust stillness. "I used to hate this place," he said finally. "Thought I'd never come back after Travis died." I turned toward him slowly. He'd never said the name out loud before. "Travis." He nodded, jaw tight. "My brother." The weight of it dropped heavy between us. "I didn't know," I said softly. "No one does," he said. "Not really. They just know the version of the story they want to believe. That he went too fast on the bike, wasn't wearing a helmet. Stupid, careless. Grayson's bad luck strikes again." He drained his glass and poured another. I didn't stop him. "What happened?" I asked. His hand tightened around the glass, and for a second I thought he wouldn't answer. But then he leaned back in the chair and closed his eyes, like if he told it in the dark, it wouldn't hurt so much. "He caught me kissing a boy behind the barn," he said, voice barely above the rain. "Not a neighbor, not a stranger. Just some dumb farmhand who left the next day like nothing happened. But Travis saw, and he didn't say a word, just walked away. Next morning, he was gone. Took the bike. Didn't even leave a note." I held my breath. Found him wrapped around a tree 12 miles down. Sheriff said he must have hit a patch of gravel. But I always wondered. His voice cracked. Was he running from what he saw? Or from me? "Grayson," I started, but he shook his head. "I don't talk about it. Not to anyone. Not even my folks. They don't want to hear it. They think Travis was perfect, and I'm just a screw-up who came back to run the farm after." I put my hand over his. He flinched at first, then let it happen. "You're not a screw-up," I said. "And Travis, he wouldn't want you carrying this alone." He looked at me then, and there was so much pain in his eyes it made my chest physically ache. I keep thinking maybe if I'd stayed away, none of this would have happened. That maybe I cursed this land just by loving the wrong person in the wrong place. No, I said firmly. You loved. There's nothing wrong with that. And if people can't see the difference between grief and guilt, that's on them. Not you. We sat in silence after that. Not the awkward kind, but the kind that feels like a shared blanket. The kind where words are just noise, and the real stuff happens in the quiet. Grayson reached for the bottle again, but I took his hand instead. Come to bed, I said. You don't have to be alone tonight. He didn't answer right away. Just looked down at our hands, like he was still deciding if he deserved this. But eventually, he nodded. The house was quiet. The storm had moved on, leaving behind only wet earth and a sky full of bruised stars. I followed him into the cabin bedroom, where the sheets smelled like cedar and something that was unmistakably him. We didn't rush. He pulled my shirt over my head like he was unwrapping something precious. I kissed the scar on his shoulder. He kissed the hollow of my throat. Everything was slow, reverent. There was no rush to take, only a deep, aching need to give. And when we finally moved together, it was like the land itself held its breath for us. After we lay in the dark, skin to skin, hearts synced like they'd finally found the right rhythm. His fingers traced circles on my back, slow and grounding. You ever think about staying? He asked, voice thick with sleep. I blinked at the ceiling, heart thudding. All the time, I whispered. He didn't say anything after that, just pulled me closer. And in the quiet, I let myself believe, for the first time, that maybe, just maybe, I was meant to run out of gas that day. Because this felt like where I was always supposed to end up. A storm hits again. The rain came down in sheets, loud and wild, drenching the world in chaos. I had run for the barn like it was the last safe place on earth, my shirt clinging to me like a second skin, mud splashing at my jeans. Lightning split the sky just as I slammed the barn door shut behind me. I was shivering, not from cold, but from him, from what happened, from what didn't. The hay smelled like summer and sex and longing. I leaned back against the wooden wall, closing my eyes. Then the door creaked open again. I knew it was him before I even saw his boots step in. Eli. His voice was low, gravel-coated in honey. I didn't move. I didn't have to. He came closer, slow, like an animal stalking its prey, or maybe like a man walking toward the edge of something he's afraid to jump from. I've been trying to stay away, he said. I noticed, I murmured, staring at him. Rain streaked down his neck. His shirt stuck to every ridge of muscle. His jeans soaked, heavy. His jaw clenched like he was fighting something he knew he'd lose. I can't stop thinking about you, he said, voice shaking now. And when you kissed me. You kissed me. He laughed softly, darkly. Yeah, yes I did. We stood in silence. Then he stepped forward. 1 step. 2. I didn't move. I couldn't. His hand came up to my face, thumb grazing my cheek, trailing down my jaw. His touch was fire. His eyes searched mine like they were begging for permission. You sure? He whispered. I didn't answer. I grabbed his collar and pulled him to me. We crashed together like a storm finally breaking, mouths greedy, teeth clashing, tongues hot and desperate. His hands were everywhere, gripping, dragging, claiming. I wrapped my legs around his waist as he pressed me up against the wall, hay falling around us like confetti. I've wanted this. He breathed against my neck. Every damn day since you got here. Then stop holding back. And he didn't. He carried me deeper into the barn, onto a stack of hay. The scent of him, the heat of his skin, the weight of his body, it was all-consuming. He undressed me like he was unwrapping something precious, eyes locked to mine, hands trembling just a little, like he couldn't believe I was real. And when he finally took me, it wasn't soft. It was raw, powerful, unfiltered need. We didn't talk. We groaned, moaned, bit, scratched. We moved in sync, in rhythm, in complete surrender. The thunder outside was nothing compared to the storm inside us. And when we came undone, It felt like breaking and healing all at once. After, he lay beside me, his arm around my waist, our bodies still slick, still tangled. "I'm not going to run anymore," he whispered. I looked up at him, chest still rising and falling. "Good," I said, "because if you do, I'll follow." The next morning, I woke to the smell of cedar, the soft weight of an arm around my waist, and the unmistakable rhythm of Grayson's breathing behind me. Steady, slow, like even in sleep. He was the calm I didn't know I'd been searching for. The sun hadn't quite risen yet. The first hints of morning spilled in through the curtains in streaks of pale gold, painting lazy lines across the sheets. I didn't move at first. I just listened to the birds outside, the low rustle of leaves in the wind, and the warmth of him, so close behind me. I shifted a little, and his arm tightened. "You trying to sneak away?" His voice was rough, sleep-drenched, and impossibly sexy. "Never," I murmured. "Just didn't want to wake the bear." He chuckled against my neck, warm breath brushing my skin. Too late. Grayson pressed a kiss to the curve of my shoulder, then another one, slower, lower, trailing heat down my spine. "I like waking up like this," he said, lips brushing my skin between each word. I turned to face him, our noses nearly touching, our legs tangled in the sheets. "You mean warm, half-naked, and tangled up with a city boy who knows nothing about cows." His smirk made something flutter low in my belly. "Exactly that." We kissed, soft at first, then deeper, slower, like neither of us wanted to let the moment slip through our fingers. There was no urgency, just heat and trust, and the quiet promise of something real blooming between us. His hands roamed lazily over my body, like he was relearning every inch. My fingers traced the curve of his jaw, the scruff of his stubble, the little scar above his brow I'd only noticed the night before. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," I whispered, forehead resting against his. His brow furrowed. "That's a dangerous request." "I'm feeling brave." He was quiet for a beat. Then, "I used to dream about this. Not exactly like this, but close. Someone in my bed. Someone who looked at me like you do. Not out of curiosity, but care." My throat tightened. "You're not alone anymore, Grayson." "I know," he said. "That's the part that scares me." We eventually made it out of bed, though it took more than a few kisses and one very persuasive hand under the covers to do it. By mid-morning, we were back outside. Grayson handed me a mug of coffee and pulled me into his side, both of us still shirtless and barefoot on the porch. "You look good here," he said, like the words had been sitting on his tongue for a while. I looked out over the field, the trees swaying gently in the breeze, the tractor still parked like a monument to everything that had started between us. "I feel good here," I admitted. "With you." He didn't say anything, just brought my hand to his lips and kissed my knuckles like something sacred. Later that afternoon, we set up a picnic in the tall grass behind the barn, blanket, lemonade, grilled corn from the night before. It felt like something out of a country song. And when Grayson lay back with his arms behind his head and the sun glinting off his skin, I couldn't help but straddle his hips and kiss him until he was breathless. We didn't have to say anything. Everything was already written on our skin. That night, we showered together, slow, quiet, his hands slick and steady as they moved over me. It wasn't just lust anymore. It was deeper, something between a prayer and a promise. When we kissed, it was like the storm from days before had never touched us, only pushed us closer. Afterward, he pulled me into bed, curling around me like I was the answer to a question he'd been too afraid to ask. "You staying the rest of the summer?" he asked, voice low in the dark. I smiled into his chest. "I'm thinking about staying longer." He didn't answer, but the way his arm tightened around me said everything I needed to hear. Days later, I get an offer to go back to the city, a dream job. The letter came on a Thursday, folded crisp in a plain white envelope. It had been slipped under the front door sometime in the morning. No fanfare. No big red stamp saying this changes everything, but it might as well have had. I found it after Grayson had gone out to tend to the north field. The return address was familiar. Midtown Manhattan. Glossy office. Nice chairs. A world I used to orbit like a starved satellite, hoping one day I'd be allowed to shine. I didn't open it right away. I made coffee first, paced the kitchen, stared out the window like it might whisper an answer to the war suddenly raging in my chest. When I finally tore it open, my hands shook. It was the offer. The offer. The kind I used to dream about when I was working late shifts and folding laundry in my one-bedroom apartment. Editorial manager. Full-time. Relocation paid. Start date in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I sat at the table for a long time, reading it again, and again, and again. It was everything I'd worked for. Everything I'd wanted. Before. Before Grayson. Before dirt roads and shirtless mornings and sun-warmed skin tangled with mine. I folded the letter again and tucked it into my bag. I didn't tell him that day, but he found it the next morning. I came in from the stables to find him at the kitchen table, the envelope in front of him, his jaw tight, his fingers clenched so hard the letter crinkled under his palm. "You weren't going to tell me?" he asked, eyes still fixed on the paper. I froze. "Grayson, you just gonna pack up and go?" "No. I mean, I wasn't sure yet. I just got it. I hadn't even." "Don't lie." That stopped me. He stood up slow, every inch of his body pulled tight like a wire about to snap. His eyes finally met mine, and there was something in them I hadn't seen since the first week I got here. "Fear. You leave," he said, voice low, strained, just like they all do. "I'm not them." "Doesn't matter. The ending's always the same." "Grayson." I stepped forward, heart pounding. "Don't do this." "You think I don't know how this goes?" He shook his head, voice rough now. "You came here lost, needing a place to catch your breath. I was just the pit stop." "That's not fair. You got what you needed, and now the city's calling your name again. Tell me I'm wrong." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Not because he was right, but because he thought he was. And somehow that hurt worse. "I didn't ask for the letter," I said quietly. "I didn't plan this." "But you thought about it." His voice cracked on the last word. I swallowed hard. "Of course I did. It's my dream job." "Yeah, and I'm just a man with dirty boots and a tractor." I flinched. "That's not what I meant." "Doesn't matter what you meant. I knew this was too good to be true." "Maybe I will leave," I snapped, anger bubbling over the ache. "But not because I want to. Because I have to think about my future. About who I am beyond this place." He went quiet. The kind of quiet that swells like a bruise. I took a shaky breath. "I love it here. I love you, God, Grayson, I do. But don't stand there and punish me for being torn." Silence stretched between us. Too wide to cross. Too sharp to touch. I turned away before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, we slept apart. The ache in my chest was louder than any storm. I lay in the spare room, staring at the ceiling, hearing every creak of the house, every sigh of the wind outside, and wishing I could rewind time. Just a few hours. Just enough to make it right. But Grayson didn't come looking for me. And I didn't go to him. I stood instead, went to the closet, and began to arrange my suitcase. The suitcase clicked shut like a final sentence. I stared at it. At the worn leather edges, the tags faded from too many flights I didn't remember taking, and the stupid little ribbon I tied on the handle months ago so I could find myself. I'd found something all right. Just not what I expected. The cabin was quiet. Too quiet. No boots on the floor. No whistle from the porch. No scent of coffee and cedar and skin I'd somehow memorized in 10 weeks. Grayson was gone. Just gone. I checked the barn, the stables, even the chicken coop. Nothing. No tractor noise in the distance. No silhouette in the fields. Just the wind and a silence thick enough to drown in. I left a note on the kitchen table. "I don't want to leave, but I can't make you fight for me. If you change your mind, you know where to find me. One last glance at the cabin, and I walked down the dirt path, suitcase in tow. Every step felt heavier than the last, like the road itself was holding me back, clinging to my boots, whispering stay. I reached the edge of the long gravel drive, heart pounding, jaw clenched, eyes burning behind my sunglasses. And then I heard it, that low, familiar rumble, the sound of 200 horsepower and a man who never said what he felt, but somehow always showed it. I looked up, and there he was, Grayson, sitting high on the old John Deere, hat low, arms flexed around the steering wheel, face unreadable. My heart cracked open like thunder. He cut the engine and climbed down, slow, purposeful, like he wasn't just crossing dirt. He was crossing the miles I tried to put between us, with one stupid decision. "If you're going," he said, voice rough, eyes fixed on mine, "I'll drive you." I swallowed hard. "That's not necessary." "Don't argue. It's a long walk to the bus stop." I wanted to smile. I couldn't. So I just nodded, lifting the suitcase, and he took it from me without a word, tossing it onto the back of the tractor like it weighed nothing. I climbed up, legs trembling. He didn't speak as he started the engine again. We rumbled down the gravel road, trees blurring past, the silence between us louder than the machine we sat on. I stared at the horizon. He stared straight ahead. It was unbearable. And then he slowed, stopped, killed the engine. The stillness hit me like a punch. I turned, confused. "Is something wrong?" His jaw clenched. "I've been angry," he said. "Not just about the letter. About everything. About losing something I didn't even realize I had until you were packing it up in a damn suitcase." I blinked. He looked at me then, really looked at me. And for the first time, I saw all of it. The fear, the want, the love. "I don't want you to go, Eli," he said. "But I ain't gonna beg." Silence stretched again. Then softer, almost a whisper. "Or you could stay." The air thickened. I stared at him, at this man who had loved me in silence, kissed me like the world was ending, and pushed me away because he was afraid I'd leave. I stood up on the tractor, hard in my throat, and jumped, landed on the gravel, hard, ran to him, and kissed him like the sky was falling, like I never wanted to leave. Because I didn't. Because I finally understood. This, the dirt, the sweat, the mornings tangled in bed, the arguments, the quiet strength. He was the life I hadn't known I needed. When I pulled away, breathless, he just smirked. "Took you long enough." "Shut up," I muttered, grinning like an idiot. "I'm staying." "Okay. But I'm still gonna make you read the damn letter. You don't get to keep me here without knowing what I gave up." He kissed me again, deep and slow. "Fair enough." That night, we burned the letter in the fire pit behind the barn. And as the paper curled and turned to ash, I looked at him, all dirty boots and strong hands and stupid soft eyes, and realized something. Dreams change. And sometimes they wear flannel and smell like sun and wood smoke and forever. Epilogue. Still here. 6 months later, I'm still waking up to the smell of cedar and coffee. Except now, it's not coming from the kitchen. It's from him. Grayson's arm is draped over my waist, his chest warm against my back, his breath slow and steady in the curve of my neck. Outside, the rooster's already crowed twice, but we're ignoring it. Just this once. I shift a little, and he tightens his hold without waking. Some things never change, but some do. Like the stack of printed pages on the nightstand beside me, my article, "The Man Who Taught Me How to Stay." I never submitted it to the city paper. I published it on a quiet little blog instead. The internet swooned. And for once, I didn't care who read it. It wasn't for them. It was for him. He hasn't said much about it. Just read it one evening by the fire, kissed me slow after, and whispered, "Guess you're a writer after all." I smiled for days. Now I roll over gently, facing him. He's awake, of course, eyes half lidded, Mouth curved like he's been watching me longer than I realize. Morning, he rasps. You always wake up this smug. Only when you're still in my bed. I snort. Still. Babe, I live here. I've been still in your bed for half a year. Best half year of my damn life. That shuts me up. He leans in, kisses me slow. Like gratitude. Like I see you. We don't say much as we get up. We don't need to. There's feed to spread, a stubborn goat to chase, and bales to load onto the back of the truck for the farmer's market. Same as yesterday. Same as tomorrow. But when he wraps an arm around me in the barn and says, "Come on, city boy. I'll show you how to hitch the trailer without busting your pretty hands," I grin and let him pull me in. Because I've stopped asking why I stayed. I just know I did. And I'm not going anywhere.